Now, one person we did hear from today for the first time, Karen Reed herself, doubling down, of course, saying she did not do this. She wants to know who did.
Said it feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Karen, just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
And no, she didn't do it. No, she didn't do it. This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
I tried to save his life.
Yeah.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in the only one trying to save his life.
Why'd you admit to it?
She didn't admit to it. She didn't admit to anything close to that. Nothing close to that. And you should know that.
That was like 3 or 4 times she admitted to it.
No, she didn't.
That's not true.
She asked a question. She asked a question, which is very different. She didn't admit to anything.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, boy, do I have a flippin' good show for you today. My guest, Kate from Masshole, Troll, Mafia, official, is probably the premier expert on this case, the Karen Reed case. If you've gotten a scoop on this case, it's probably come from Kate. She says about her channel, my channel is a dissent channel, a stick up for the victimized channel, a revel in drama and fight in the arena channel. If you ask certain people, it's a troll farm or a mafia farm. Those people have victimized other people, so we revel in the label. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much, Robert. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so excited to have you. I've been a super fan of your channel, so this is a real treat for me. So, now we're on day 4 of the subject today we're talking about, if you just tuned in, is the Karen Reed trial. And how did you get interested? You seem to know everything about this case. How did you get interested, and how do you seem to know everything about this case?
So I hate Turtle Boy. That's pretty much all that. I mean, so I tend to profile people anyway. I've been on and off with him for years, battling back and forth. I actually used to work for him. So there was about a 2-year period when I wrote for his blog. I pretty much co-ran the blog. I'm not thrilled to admit that now, but it is the truth. Unfortunately, that is what I did. And when I separated from the blog, he went on the attack. So it's been kind of back and forth ever since. So I had kind of been ignoring him for maybe a year and a half. And all of a sudden I start getting these emails in my inbox, and it's like, oh, look at what, Turtle Boy is doing now. So I kind of look into it. I read the first blog that he writes, and I'm like, great. He's gotten into true crime. This conspiracy theory is batshit bananas insane. This is not going to get any traction, and RIP Turtle Boy, pretty much. And that didn't happen. So I ended up getting some emails from some members of John O'Keefe's family. They had read a blog series that I had written on Turtle Boy, maybe, 2-3 years ago. And they originally came to me in my email and said, hey, do you have any more dirt on this guy? He's terrorizing our family. My insert relative here was murdered, and this is what happened. And at first I said, well, sorry about your loss. That's pretty awful. I would not suggest, slinging mud with this guy. Good luck in your endeavors. And then I started following along a little bit more, and I saw the insane amount of just witness intimidation that was coming out of this, right? And at some point, I just decided that I could not stand by any longer, and I wanted to challenge the narrative, right, and really get to the bottom of it. So I started reading through all the court documents, and the first thing that I noticed about the narrative that was out in the media is they were really conveniently ignoring most of the prosecution filings, right? And just like any story, if you're only reading one side of it, you're not getting the full picture. So I read through everything, prosecution, defense, and I start watching hearings, and I start following along with what the conspiracy theory du jour is. And slowly but surely, I start making contact with more members of the O'Keefe family and extended family, the witnesses in the case, you know, some other people that were involved in the case. And I start to just kind of talk to them, read through, and get a better idea of what's going on in the case. So, you know, at that point, I made some friends, I got some sources, and I was able to get some really good information in real time as this goes moving forward. And, you know, of course, as I'm getting this information in, I had started with the assumption that Karen Read was somehow involved in this whole social media machine, right? Because you could watch in the narrative, some of the personal attacks on certain people were just too personal, if you know what I mean. I'm reading the blogs that Turtle Boy is writing, and I'm reading the narrative that's being put out for the defense. And sometimes it would kind of veer into like scorned, bitter ex-girlfriend territory, right? Catty is the best way to describe it. And I'm like, well, this kind of sounds like Karen has her hands in it. So I set out to investigate that a little bit further and see if I could draw a nexus between Turtle Boy and Karen Read. And I could. So when I started getting this information in and kind of figuring this out, I didn't necessarily publish all of it. I brought it over to the authorities. And, you know, fast forward to now, we have, you know, several indictments and hopefully more coming.
Wow. So you were long. So am I understanding correctly? You were long gone from Turtle Boy's
right
blog when he started with this Karen Read nonsense.
If I was still there, I would have never, ever in a million years gone for this. Never, you know, transparent from the beginning. But so I was gone. Haynes left to his own devices. Right.
So how did he get hooked up? So it just seems like, you know, I talk a lot. I mean, my channel is really about these. I've done so many of these innocence fraud campaigns. I've never done one before. I've never seen one. Usually it's 14 years after a conviction, not before a trial.
Right.
And I've never seen one that gets what you're saying exactly, so personal, digging into every aspect of people's personal lives, their appearance, their associations. And it seems like that's also what we're seeing in court. I mean, it seems like every single one of these witnesses, it seems like they're up on trial for being a bad cop, a bad paramedic, a bad firefighter, and Karen, it's just like this constant game of attack anybody with any kind of damaging information about Karen Read. So I think the question I get most, and I think what my audience wants to know most, is how did Turtle Boy and Karen Read get hooked up? And how did all these players, and how did Melanie Little seem to get hooked up? And how did all these players, how did this web get Jen Mikado we can talk about? How did this all get amassed? This arsenal
from what we know, at least about Turtle Boy, I know the genesis of how Turtle Boy got involved. And it seems like it kind of spider-webbed out from there because he was able to get some traction on his, I hate to call it coverage, his propaganda, right? He was able to get some traction with that. And it looks like other creators kind of took note of this. And I think it really started on TikTok more than anything else is where it really started to blow up with other creators. But I know that with Turtle Boy anyway, what we were able to uncover through, I mean, for lack of a better term, the investigation that we did. I hate to call it an investigation, but I mean, you know, our research anyway, what we were able to uncover is that, and this is a very strange story. So Karen Read was essentially alone in this. She had her family. She had a couple friends from Florida. Nobody local was supporting her. The story was in the media, not like it is right now, but a little bit here and there. And people would write nasty comments under the, you know, posts about her case. And this would upset her. And she had a friend from college, a woman by the name of Natale. And she and Natale had reconnected over this and they spoke over the internet. And Natale would help her by monitoring some of the social media comments so that Karen didn't have to look at them. And one thing that Natale noticed, hold on just a second. Sorry, I think my dog is getting into something. Natalie would monitor these social media comments. And one thing that she noticed was a woman by the name of Jennifer Altman. And Jennifer Altman would defend Karen in the comments. And so Natalie and Karen thought that this was very nice. Gee golly, that's really nice of her. So Natalie at some point goes to Karen and says, hey, I think we should reach out to Jennifer Altman and thank her for being so supportive and so kind in the comments. And Karen said, yeah, do that. So Natalie reaches out to Jennifer Altman and they talk, and, Natalie says, thank you so much. And Jennifer Altman goes, hey, I'm involved with, my friend runs this blog, Turtle Boy Sports. I think he's going to write about this. I would like him to write about this. And I'd like to get you guys in touch. So Natalie goes back to Karen and Karen says, yep, that's fine. That's a great idea. So they connect and they start using Natalie as the intermediary. So what would happen was Karen would use the Signal app, which is an encrypted end-to-end messaging application, which is kind of sketchy, right? I'm not saying, I understand people use it sometimes, but in this context, it doesn't look great. So she would message Natalie on Signal. Natalie would copy and paste that Signal message over to Aiden. And that's how they would exchange information and feedback, as well as Karen would sometimes issue what looks like orders. Like, for instance, at one point, she tells Natalie to tell Aiden, so this message is there, I wanted Paula O'Keefe on our side, but I've changed my mind. He's stupid. He can't sit at our table. Fuck him. Go after him. So she's doing directives here, right? And then at some point, Karen and Natalie have a falling out. So when they have the falling out, this is May 7th of 2023, Aiden and Karen talk on the phone for the first time. And from that point on, they kind of cast Natalie aside. And now they are working together directly through the Signal app. And then obviously the phone calls that we know about now, there were 189 within a few month period, over 40 hours of phone calls. So the genesis of this, as odd as it is one woman who is a nasty drunk of a woman at that, like most of the Turtle Riders, connected Karen's friend Natalie and Aiden, and from there, we get all this.
Interesting. Bill Slaughter, KAW. Thank you so much. B. Tim, Kate, did you see Natalie? Innocence Fraud Watch channel has been doing a lot of short videos on Natalie's police 2023 police interview. I've been put at least one up on my community tab. It's pretty interesting. I'm sure, Kate, have you seen it? Have you seen the?
I haven't actually. I don't. Natalie is a friend of mine at this point. I am very fond of her. I had talked to her early on, and that's how I kind of discovered the nexus between the two of them. It was the first, solid proof that I had. And, as she's telling me this stuff, I was like, whoa, I'm probably not the person you want to tell this to. I think this is better off in better hands. But obviously, we've stayed in touch since, and I find her to be she's a lovely woman. So I know most of what she told the police, most likely because she also told me. And we talk quite frequently. I found it was more interesting with Natalie, sort of the story about how she got involved with Karen and how she kind of got hoodwinked, and how these people who are otherwise she's not a stupid woman by any stretch of the imagination. She's intelligent. She's a businesswoman. She's successful. And she's a very kind person. She's not malicious at all that I've ever seen. But, somehow she gets hoodwinked into this, and she starts, doing things that I don't think that usually she would do. I remember at one point kind of questioning as she's telling me stuff and going, you didn't think it was weird that Karen wanted to have you send pictures of other people's children to this strange man in Massachusetts? And, it didn't even dawn on her, because she genuinely believed that she was helping her friend who was unjustly and falsely accused of this crime. And then after Natalie was able to see the other side of the story, because even with her close proximity to Karen, she was also not afforded the opportunity to really see or read or understand the prosecution's case. That was hidden from her too. So the only thing that she got was Karen's narrative, Karen's side, and then the filings from the defense, which, by the way, Karen would often explain for both Natalie and Aiden. So in some cases, Aiden wasn't even necessarily reading these documents and interpreting them himself. He was just verbatim going through Karen's interpretation of these filings, which are from her own defense. So that's problematic too. But Natalie was an interesting one for me. Just kind of, you kind of want to get into somebody's mind and think what drives someone to do this. And I think it really is just the selective information that's being filtered out to these people, right? And they have good intentions. And for whatever reason, they consider Karen to be a sympathetic character. I do not, right? But for whatever reason they do. So I think that it was kind of just an interesting little bit of insight into some of the people that support Karen, because I think outside of this sort of microcosm that they're in with this case, they're probably pretty average, decent people. They've just been thrown off the rails into this really kind of deplorable behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I always say to, until you've read the court documents, on any case, I'm talking about usually the regular innocence fraud cases that I talk about, read both sides of it and not just our media before you start gunning from someone, gunning for someone's innocence who's been convicted of a crime. This is a little bit different because all this stuff, happened, before she even really got, it was just in the early days of her hearing. Sarah Adams wants to know, of course, about Melanie Little, and I have your fantastic ode to Ms. Little. How did Melanie Little get involved in this?
I don't know. This woman just came out of nowhere. I have like kind of a team that I work with that, just help me with a lot of like research, production stuff, like whatever I can't do, they're usually doing for me, and a lot of monitoring and archiving, right? So we keep a lot of archives of the like an encyclopedia of everything that's gone on with this case. So one of my friends there, she's been like following Melanie Little really regularly with this, and she's like enraged all the time at the level of misinformation that comes out of, I wouldn't even say misinformation, disinformation that comes out of Melanie Little's mouth. I have no idea. I have a theory, but it's not fact, and I it's just a hunch that I have, that there is an apparatus within Karen Read's defense team that is going out and fighting these creators and drawing them in, whether it's giving them a scoop or, they see their numbers increase and they keep going with that, or maybe they're getting paid. I don't know. It's still a little bit unclear what that defense fundraiser that Karen Read put up, that I think has raised maybe $250,000, $300,000 at this point. Nobody really knows what that's for. So she paid for her lawyers, both Alan Jackson and David Yannetti, on a flat fee. I am not 100% sure whether that was just pre-trial or trial, but they were very large numbers. So I think it's all the way through. She paid David Yannetti $200,000, and that was his discounted rate. And she paid Alan Jackson $250,000. So that was a flat fee she paid. I've seen emails and fee agreements because she shared them with other people. So I know that is what she paid. She told some people within her inner circle at one point that what she was raising money for was a civil attorney for when she sues the prosecution and police after she is acquitted. But if that's what she's telling people consistently, and that really is the story, that is legitimate fraud. Because she has no standing to sue the prosecution or the police, right?
That's
yeah.
That's exactly how innocence fraud works. That's how it works. It works in our civil courts where they clean up for their totally rightful arrest, their rightful prosecution, their rightful conviction. And I have seen guilty people paid out, tens of millions of dollars by our court system with taxpayer dollars. I've been screaming about it on this channel for years and years and years. It's the biggest fraud in America. Nobody is talking about. And I think it's because it's an army of lawyers involved in it and everyone's scared to get sued. But speaking of getting sued, I want to show, I'm very excited to be your co-defendant in our civil defense from Melanie Little. So she presents herself like, I just want to look at the facts. And then she speculates, which she pointed out in the song we're going to listen to in just a second, that she speculates so much. She had on an expert. I talked about her because she had on a forensic expert, Joseph Scott Morgan, and in my opinion, he embarrassed her. She kept trying to put words in his mouth. Is this a paw print? No. Can you? And then she said, "Could you dumb down your language? My audience doesn't know what post-mortem means. And I thought, this is a true crime audience and they don't know what post-mortem means. I mean, it's like, how dumbed down do you have to go? But apparently pretty dumbed down. And then she said, this looks like, this looks like abrasions, are these abrasions? And he said, yes, I think if I'm remembering correctly, basically he disagreed with pretty much her entire analysis, which I thought was pretty interesting. You don't see that every day in true crime. Usually you have on an expert to further or amplify your message. And in this case, he totally was, opposed to pretty much everything that she was saying.
And I think that's okay. I mean, I don't do true crime. It's not really my thing, but I do like to have guests on that don't agree with me. It's fine to have your viewpoint challenged. The problem with Melanie is she's hearing this from the expert that she invited. And then it's like in one ear, out the other, right back to the dog bites. They're not dog bites. That is dead. The shirt sleeve was tested for dog DNA. Doesn't exist. Everyone seems in the medical community, and I'm not talking about the CNAs that subscribe to Melanie Little and Turtle Boy Live, and they're like, those are definitely dog bites, or right? All of the medical experts are saying those are blunt force abrasions, right? So it's dead, but Melanie Little just can't let it go. I think because. And understood, this is just how the conspiracy theory here works. You concede one point, and it's like, that's a huge chip out of the conspiracy, right? Because they don't have a lot of points to really repeat at this point. It's dog bites. The injuries are consistent with a fight. Jen McCabe's Google search. And that's pretty much all they have at this point, right? And Michael Proctor is close family friends with the Albert family, which is, so every time that you chip one of those away, you're chipping like 25% of her defense away, right? And I think somebody who is being intellectually genuine and honest, right, is going to look at that and understand, especially an attorney, right? Because you understand how these things work, that, if one point takes away a quarter of your defense isn't that strong, and they should be saying that. And she's not. She's just not. So, I don't know if Melanie Little maybe she's intellectually, disadvantaged. That's a possibility. I don't know. Or maybe she's just really, really, really dishonest.
I think I'm just gonna play this because it's one of my favorite things ever coming out of Kate's channel. If you're just tuning in now, I'm talking to Kate from Masshole, Troll Mafia official. This is the song she wrote to Melanie Little.
She's left streaming at night. Her feelings are hurt. She'll put up a fight to spread insane disinformation. She uses really obvious beauty filters to hide that she's really an 800-year-old vampiric creature. She sustains herself on adrenochrome, harvested from impoverished orphan children. She's going to sue you if you make her feel sad. If you offend her on Twitter, it's a federal crime, and that's bad. Oh, Melanie, you're more than a little slow. You inserted yourself into a case and lie about things you really don't know. Your narrative is paper thin. Your own expert gets betrayed you. Oh, Melanie Little, nothing you say is true. Melanie Little doesn't like rumors on Twitter. That's why she rage quit, but she'll accuse innocent people of horrible crimes. And she doesn't care about the truth or facts or any of it. I wasn't in Cancun that day, but I heard she shared a room with Alan Jackson, and when they left he came out as gay. That's what I heard anyway. And it's pretty cool of her to be so vile that it turned Alan Jackson gay. I'm just speculating, not sure. this is true. I'm just doing what you do. Oh, Melanie, you know this much is true. But Melanie, you spread out and freak out when it happens to you. Stop threatening to sue, grow a thicker skin, finally tell the truth. They are abrasions that are no dog bites. John O'Keefe never made in the house.
Okay.
Getting sued for that, apparently.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't. Please, please. I would love
like
that
the
trial. I would
point
love to
of
be a
what I
defendant in
wrote.
that trial.
She just right over her head. She doesn't understand. Do I really believe that Melanie Little is an 800-year-old vampiric creature who sustains herself on adrenochrome and turned Alan Jackson gay? I don't believe that. No, I totally.
You're just speculating. You say you're just speculating.
She's doing what she does, right?
Right. That's what she said. She's just speculating. But just one more for those who are asking who Melanie Little is. I actually have. This is from Waiting on Angel's channel. This is a really interesting trope in the innocence fraud world, which is to take the in this case, the accused murderer and make them the victim. Right. So this is what someone would say about John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe is you. John O'Keefe is your friend. Now, of course, so it's obviously, so to turn it on its head, so to totally obscure the victim altogether while making this, in this case, the accused killer, the victim. Let's take a look. This is Melanie Little. She's a civil attorney on YouTube, has the Attorney Melanie Little channel, for those who are asking. She refuses to say my name, but by
Me
by
too.
all the
She just brings up
clues,
my children. Like,
right.
Even my children understand that you're an idiot, Melanie, just so we're clear.
Right. And she's gone up, she's accused, sort of tried to accuse by association, I believe that's what she was doing, of some kind of doxing that I don't approve of, I've never done, and make it look like she was under attack from me and hyping up all her followers to attack my channel. So that was what happened there for those that missed that little drama. But here's Melanie Little.
Who is Karen Reed anyway? Who is she? Why would anybody want to frame her? I submit to you, my friends, Karen Reed.
So just also what I left out is that Melanie Little is also an actress, and she uses her acting, her patented acting style in her delivery.
Is this this is her, like, this is it? I thought that she perhaps was had a stroke this whole time, honestly. I'm not even kidding. The way that her watch the side of her mouth. It doesn't move when she talks. So I did not realize this is her acting though.
Yeah, this is her. I mean, I played some of her acting reel, and I did so just to show how close it was to the way that she delivers the information on her channel. All the same expressions, all the same speech pattern. I know she's the same person, but you know, it seems like heavy acting going on her channel.
Is you. Karen Reed is me. Karen Reed is your sister. Karen Reed is my sister. Karen Reed is your mother, your daughter, your friend. And if Karen Reed did not have the financial backing to be able to afford the very expensive defense in this case, she'd be sitting in a jail cell still over 2 years later. So if you don't think that this is scary, I don't know what to tell you. We are all Karen Reed. That's right.
And you know, so it's just something that I've seen over and over again in these kind of campaigns. Like obscure the victim, right? Make the victimizer the victim, and make her look like the underdog. When right there, Melanie Little is just admitting that she's by far the the underdog is the Commonwealth in this case, and they're outspent, and certainly have had her side has had a PR campaign not to be believed, using the likes of her and many other people. You know, I saw just the news the other day. They said Karen Reed supporters are here, both Karen Reed supporters and those, and she said something like, and those that support Karen Reed. I was like, oh, but she's like, both sides are here. I was like, oh, really? Those are both sides, the Karen Reed supporters and the Karen Reed supporters. And those that, no, I think she said, and those that think Karen Reed is innocent. I think she meant to say it was obviously a slip, but it was just such a good example of the way that this case is being presented. I don't know if you saw Jesse Weber on the other day.
That's a new one. I've never even heard that name.
Okay. I have that for tomorrow. Tomorrow.
I will tune in. I can't with all these people coming through the woodwork. This refrain of, oh, poor Karen Reed, this is so scary. Like, no, this will not be you if you take several very easy steps. Number one, try to refrain from drinking 9 vodka sodas in the course of 2 hours. That's a good start. If you do, don't get behind the wheel of your car. If you do get behind the wheel of your car, don't have your boyfriend get in. If he does get in, make sure that it's not a blizzard. If you drive drunk with your boyfriend in a blizzard, try to refrain from arguing. Count to 10, take a deep breath, right? Like when they find him in the morning, don't yell at the top of your lungs, I hit him, oh my God, this is my fault, right? There's a lot of things you can do differently to not be Karen Reed. I mean, it's preposterous, this idea that this is somehow unjust. Probable cause, as I'm sure you're aware, is a really low bar, right? Really,
yes.
It's more likely than not that a crime occurred, right? That's probable cause, right? So, I mean, just her yelling, I hit him, it probably satisfies that standard. They did a little bit more investigation before they grabbed her, about 3 days worth, but like she handed it to him right there. Innocent people go through trial sometimes. I won't say all the time, but it does happen. And if she's truly innocent, she would be acquitted without all this extra stuff. I actually, tonight at 8:45, have a new song for Karen that we are premiering. But I mean, honestly, that's the thing that sticks out to me the most. And unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to see it come out in court as much as I wish that it would. Innocent people don't need the social media machine. Innocent people don't need to resort to this level of just abhorrent witness intimidation and threats, right? One of the firefighters, at least one that we know of, one of the firefighters that testified on Friday is already receiving death threats.
Wow, that's she really held her own.
She did.
I thought, and she said, she goes, Alan Jackson says you went on vacation. She goes, I went on a day trip to the beach like 50 years ago or whenever it was. And I don't even remember it. Good for her that she has such a heavy social life that she doesn't remember it. Sarah Adams, does mouthwash count? Are you drinking 8 things of mouthwash? Is that what you mean, Sarah Adams? I'm not sure. I just wanted to look at Boundless Millennials with you, his wrap up of last day in court. And he did a really excellent wrap up of all these witnesses and how they were questioned. And
day 3 of the Karen Reed trial. What have we learned so far?
There's the vehicle right there, and the females are right there.
How soon was it when you pulled in there that you saw John's body?
Immediately.
And that's what everyone says. She saw him immediately. Right. And you can see where sadly John O'Keefe was. It was not an area where they say visibility is 0, that she's gonna.
That's where he is. That's when this is dash cam from when the first officer arrived. So over there is Carrie Roberts and Karen Reed, and I believe Jen McCabe is somewhere around there too. And then John O'Keefe is there too. So we're looking at the dash cam video with a spotlight on. I don't understand why Karen Reed is on national television going, yeah, I saw him immediately from the back seat of a moving vehicle.
Yeah.
This is a police cruiser with a spotlight on. Please, someone tell me where John O'Keefe is laying.
And when you make an argument about this case, I always find it very interesting, Kate. You really concentrate on the fact that John O'Keefe never went into the house.
Mm-hmm.
And now they seem to be pulling it away from the house. But I guess this conspiracy doesn't work if he never walked into the house. You can't say that it's a law enforcement cover up. There's nowhere else no kind of other way that he could end up like that if he never went in the house, right? Unless you're going to say snowplow driver, which Karen Reed suggested that morning to Carrie Roberts, but it doesn't really work. And I thought you laid out a banger of a argument on Yellow Cottage Tales, and it's like in one ear out the other. Why do you think people can't hear it? The free Karen readers. I mean, why do they hold on to this?
I think at this point, it's just a matter of sunk cost fallacy. That a lot of these people, they have put a lot of themselves into this financially, emotionally, physically. These are people who have, I spoke to someone the other day who is claiming anyway that they donated $20,000 between, Turtle Boy and Karen Reed's case just to turn around afterwards and go, oh my God, I don't know if I believe this anymore. That's not the norm, though. I think that, as human beings, it's natural. If we put so much into something, it becomes necessary that it is true. Otherwise, we just wasted time, money, energy. So I think that's where a lot of these people are at right now, because I am watching the trial every day, and I am not seeing what they're seeing. I am not seeing catastrophe for the prosecution here at all. I think they're getting out exactly what they want to get out. And I know that Alan Jackson is trying his best, and David Yannetti is trying his best. But I don't see what they're seeing. They're not really impeaching witnesses. One thing, obviously the online mob is very, very sort of myopically focused right now on Katie McLaughlin and her relationship with Caitlin Albert. What I think is interesting, at least on social media, and really even in the cross-examination, there's almost no focus on Katie McLaughlin lying about Karen Reed making the admission. All of the focus is Katie McLaughlin allegedly lying about her connection to Caitlin Albert, which I do not believe that she is lying about regardless. But even still, it's odd to me that it's not so much even that this defense or the people that support it, they're not really even focused on trying to discredit the actual facts within the case. They're just trying to discredit people personally. And I don't know why they think that's going to be effective.
And I'm thinking back to my relationships. I went to the beach in a real vacation, to the Jersey Shore, rented a house with a bunch of girls. And there were girls there. I'm talking about when I was in high school a zillion years ago. There were girls there that were acquaintances. They weren't close friends. They had never been to my house. I had never been to their house. But they were friends of my friends. I don't understand how Alan Jackson can't understand that relationship. I don't, it seems like a natural part of human life, but it seems like these witnesses are on trial. B. Tim says it's funny none of the law tubers picked up Karen asked the EMT worker. This was really important, B. Tim, thank you. How long can someone stay in the cold without a jacket? Which adds more credibility to Jen being asked by Karen to search.
Yeah, but I think they're selectively really looking at that. And just to get back to your, point about going on vacation, what the defense also seems to, really ignore here, which I think is glaring, is that, 20 days before John O'Keefe was found dead, Karen, John, and the children went on a vacation to Aruba, so out of the country, with 70 people that were all acquaintances or strangers to Karen Reed. I mean, she's
Great point.
probably in some group pictures with people that she doesn't know. But that's fine. That's fine. But when Katie McLaughlin is in pictures with acquaintances, and I have yet to see any evidence of a substantial personal relationship between the two women, and I truly do not believe that it's there. I think that she's being completely honest when she says we are acquaintances, we had mutual friends. I think so far, I mean, the defense was only able to present 3 photos in a 10-year span from when these women, really more like a 14-year span, because they went to high school together, right? So she graduated 10 years ago, but they started about 13 years ago. So 14 years ago. So within that period, the defense could only bring to court 3 photos of the women together, all in group settings, which obviously were not admissible. And now that social media is going insane and threatening this girl's life, they can still only pull maybe 10 pictures over a 14-year period of these 2 women together. It's not evidence of a substantial personal relationship. And again, they're challenging that, but not the fact that Karen Reed told this woman, I hit him. It's like they don't want to touch that.
Yeah. Bill Slaughter says, I'm from a little town in Georgia. Everyone knows everyone. Conspiracy. So, yeah, thank you. But yeah, it's true. And it seems like, I'm thinking sometimes listening to this, did you put it in your report what Karen said? No. And I thought, is this police officer on trial for his job, for bad policing? Because maybe he's guilty of being a little sloppy with his police reports. I was thinking about Office Space's TPI reports or whatever, that he didn't put this in. But I mean, that's the best thing that they've scored. It seems like they don't have much right now. That's how I'm seeing it. I'm also talking to Brett Smith Ellis, who's in the courtroom. He says it's been devastating for Karen Reed. Yeah,
I mean, Grant has his own inherent bias. So I tend to be, I don't want to presume what the jury is thinking or how they're reacting. I don't know. I know that all of this distraction, it really is, the entire defense is like, look over here. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, Karen said on national television that she said some version of, I hit him. She claims that it was a question. Obviously, 4 first responders and a couple of cops are saying that it was an admission. Either way, they both seem to agree that one way or another, she said it. So I'm a little bit confused as to why the defense is going down that road and in their cross-examination and really heavily implying and trying to disprove that she said these things at all, when the prosecution is going to be able to pull out a televised and recorded interview with Karen Reed, her face, her voice, her saying, yeah, I said it. I said, did I hit him? It was preceded by a did and preceded by a did and proceeded by a question mark. Because I think if I was on that jury, I would go, wow, you just spent a lot of time trying to disprove that she ever said this at all, but she admitted to it on national television.
Right. And then even if she did say that, I always say best case scenario, she's putting it in the realm of possibilities that she hit him. No. Do you know what I'm saying? She's accepting that as a possibility.
Right.
So, and not making it so, unlikely sunny day. And I would never predict, I think it's a fool's game predicting which way a jury will go. I've never predicted which way a jury can go. I just feel looking at and obviously we're in the state's case now, not the defense's hasn't presented their case, but they look beat up walking away from court. I have to say that they look like they've had a couple hard days in court. Does that mean they're not going to win their case? No, you just don't know with a jury, but I don't think it's been this slam dunk great day for Karen Reed in court.
Not at all. I mean, again, it's not every single commentator that is pro Karen Reed looks at every single piece of testimony in a vacuum, right? And that's not how the state is presenting their case. That's not how a case goes at all. There is not ever one smoking gun. That's for television. It is the totality of the evidence. And not for nothing, but we're looking to a 68-week trial where the prosecution is anticipating to take double the amount of time presenting their case than the defense has, right? So I would say that the preponderance of the evidence belongs to the Commonwealth here, right? Which is obviously not the standard that you get a conviction here, but they seem to have more evidence against Karen than Karen has for herself and her innocence, right? So, I mean, the fact that you can trip up one EMT that says whatever you say, Alan Jackson, after insisting that this is what he heard, doesn't necessarily negate that 5 other people are also saying that they hear this. And we haven't even gotten to the forensic evidence, right? We have the taillight pieces by the body, the cocktail glass by the body, the vehicle information, the reconstruction report. We have the pathologist report, the medical examiner's report. We still haven't heard from the emergency room staff yet. And I did think it was interesting that, I don't know if you watched this hearing, but just the motions in limine, the Commonwealth moved to admit Karen's statements to emergency room staff. Did you see this?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So Alan Jackson, maybe it was Dave, I think it was actually David Ionetti, one of her attorneys, made an interesting offhanded remark. We don't have grounds to oppose this because these admissions are admissible. So it sounds like she talked to emergency room staff too. So you've got one round of EMTs. That's the ones that we heard from first, Nuttall, McLaughlin. There's 2 big ones that stick out to me. You hear them first. Now we've heard, and at least a few of them heard her say, I hit him. Then you move on to the EMTs that showed up for the Section 12, and they have more incriminating statements. We haven't even gotten to the emergency room staff. And I am anticipating that what they have to say is going to corroborate a lot of the previous statements. So they're really moving piece by piece here. And I don't think that it can be viewed in a vacuum. I don't understand how these people look at this case day by day and go, oh, case over, she's acquitted, this is devastating for the prosecution. Or, Lally's opening statement was boring, ergo they've lost the case. And these are some attorneys that are saying this. Melanie Little at least purports herself to be an attorney, and they're saying this.
Right. I just haven't seen cases 1 in opening statement.
Or
it's like
right.
A loss or 1 in opening statement.
Yes. Oh, it's crazy.
They're a trailer, a preview of what's to come. Sunny Day says, I might have incapacitated him and I saw him go into the house in the same interview. Those cannot both be true. Okay, back to, this is the Boundless Millennials video. Now, I think I think the second title to it is that now the EMTs are in on it, or the firefighters are in on it.
There are actually 3 women on scene that morning, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see any blood on Miss Roberts' face or hair?
No.
Okay. Was she screaming and yelling things and moving around the scene?
No.
There was one individual that replied several times, I hit him.
Is that something that she said once or more than once or something?
It was several times.
You were a part-time.
So the case I was talking about before this is the murder of Dan Markel, and because it was a murder for hire case, a lot of the co-conspirators, people who've been were convicted of crimes, were testifying. These are some of the most decent, believable witnesses you'll ever see in a case, right, one after another, and each one is being painted as the picture of darkness, deceit, some sort of mass conspiracy. I don't know how they're going to sell that.
And I understand, and I think that it was correct in the existence of the FBI probe being inadmissible, particularly because the judge has seen all, 3,100 pages and was not moved at all. But I think that is an important layer when we talk about it anyway with these witnesses and the potential for conspiracy. We're talking 2 years now, unimaginable public pressure, the pressure of an FBI probe, and not one of these witnesses has cracked or changed their story. right? I think people fall apart for less. Otherwise, most of these sort of, conspiratorial crimes would never be solved, right? But that's usually how they're solved, is one person cracks. In this case, there is not one. I think that after so many times that these witnesses have had to testify leading up to the trial where they will yet testify again, their testimony has been so consistent that it's fair to say that they're telling the truth. Definitely more fair to assume that they are than they are not at this point. There is no evidence to support that any of these people are lying. The fact that they have testified so many times and stayed consistent, I would posit anyway, is evidence that they are telling the truth, right? And I don't understand how that's being ignored even.
And no, but then it's also being sort of perverted in that they'll say, well, he mentioned it in one testimony and not another, some sort of detail.
Right.
And if you're making something up, that you can only tell it forwards, you can't tell it backwards, you can't mix it up.
Right.
And of course, who has told the same story the same way with all the same details all the way through over and over again? You just can't. You can't. Or maybe you can, but it's difficult. It's more difficult. Right. Some details are going to come in, some details are not. All right. We'll try to get through day 3 of the summation.
An officer at that point?
No, it was full time.
Everybody appeared to be quite flustered.
She was screaming, is that my boyfriend? Is he dead?
That whole group was kind of pacing around, lack of a better term, kind of running around in circles.
They were going back and forth between the body and the side of the street, back and forth.
The individual that said, I hit him, appeared to have some blood on her face, presumably for attempting CPR prior to our arrival.
I tried to save his life.
Mr. O'Keefe was not being touched by any individual when I first got to him.
I tried to save his life at 6 in the morning. I was covered in his blood. I was the only one trying to save his life.
There was no interventions being done, Mr. O'Keefe, when I got to him.
Did any of the neighbors or anybody else come outside at any point in time? I did not.
Couldn't tell you the number of articles of clothing, but I believe a winter jacket and a sweatshirt.
Like water, kind of like frozen on kind of to his face.
You didn't say that they were abrasions.
Scratches and abrasions, in my point of view, seem to go hand in hand.
At that point, approximately 6 inches.
The word that you used was scratches.
Yes, they were like furrows. Down.
Say that again?
Furrows, if you will, for lack of a better term.
I don't mean to be a wise guy, sir, but did any of the other neighbors on the entire street have the body of a dead police officer on their front lawn?
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, so that's sustained. All right. You are all set, sir.
Did I incapacitate him unwittingly, somehow, and then in his drunkenness, passed out? I said I hit him. It was preceded by a did and proceeded by a question mark.
Very, very hard to hear. Have you listened to that before?
No.
Does it appear to you that she said, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home?
I couldn't understand anything.
Okay.
So day 1, we saw Aaron and Paul O'Keefe, who testified about speaking to Karen that morning and events that transpired that morning. The biggest takeaway is
Here's a fact that's crazy that nobody talks about is the fact that Karen Read never talked to anyone ever again. So this is something that comes up in the Dan Markel case where Wendy Adelson, an unindicted co-conspirator, never talked to her ex-husband's parents, the grandparents of her children ever again. And everyone would bring up that fact. But in this case, if you're pro Karen Read, it's totally unimportant. I think that was huge. And that she comes back into the house and she gets all her stuff immediately. And she seems, and one of the first things she's saying is, I don't want to take care of the children.
Well, and that's preposterous because she knew that they were not married. She knew that wasn't her husband. Frankly, she knew that they were breaking up because he had been texting and verbally telling her, I am done with this relationship. So, and it's not even like their relationship was not substantial enough even for it to be like, well, we're not married, but I'm calling him my husband because that's how we live. That's not even how they lived. She maintained her own home the entire time. He maintained his, right? She was talking to other people and exploring her options. We see that through Higgins. I am not sure if he was or not. I'm sure that he wanted to, because he wanted to be rid of Karen Read. That is abundantly clear from, anyone who spoke to him around that time, from his own messages, from his, the fights that the children are going to recount. He didn't want her there anymore. So, and she certainly knew that she didn't have any legal rights to the children. And I think that's something that the, prosecution kind of highlights right off the bat with Aaron and Paul is, well, did she have any legal rights to these children? No, she did not. Why is she making those statements then? You know that you're not going to have to take care of the children. You don't have rights to the children, right? And John didn't want you around the kids anyway, Karen. And her behavior was really strange. Just the fact that she calls under the pretense, right? So she calls Paul and says, I would like to go over to the house to see the children. Yep, sure, fine. That's whatever, Karen. And she goes there, and immediately she's staring at the taillight. She starts her car to warm it up. She goes right in. She goes upstairs, grabs her stuff. She's up there with the family computer and just her father, unsupervised, for about 15 minutes, and then beelines it out the door. That is not the actions of someone who doesn't have anything weighing on their conscience. That's not the actions of a loving girlfriend or partner. That's certainly not the actions of a loving parental figure. These children are being told that their uncle is dead, and you just wordlessly go upstairs and then just leave them. She didn't care.
Yeah, bizarre. And their parents, so callous not to say anything. I thought they were fantastic witnesses, both Paul O'Keefe and Aaron. I thought they were terrific witnesses.
There are that she told Aaron O'Keefe that she has to remember the bad times, and that she said, even though they were friends, she said, I don't think I'll ever talk to you again. I don't think I'll ever see you guys again. And Aaron O'Keefe was like, what do you mean? We're friends. And none of them ever heard from him again. None of their mutual friends, the kids, it's consciousness of guilt, much. A bunch of people heard her say, I hit him, it was my fault. As we get into the statements, Officer Saraf is saying that she said, it's my fault, I did this, something to that effect. But he didn't put it in his report. Seems odd. Seems like in the drama of when he first arrived, before ambulance and the firefighters got there, that's when she was saying things, that's when he was hearing those things. And he was trying to cure and organize and whatever with the situation. And then when he got to the part where...
Do people understand what sworn testimony is under oath? It's as good as a report, under penalty of perjury.
Often more time. So reports aren't necessarily admissible all the time, right? But testimony is.
Exactly.
The trial relies on testimony above reports, right? And I think that, if you read a police report, which I've done a lot of, public records is part of what I built my channel on, right? As I do a lot of public records requests. If you look at a police report or even a statement of facts, it usually will explicitly state somewhere in there, right, that this is not the totality of the case or an entire recitation of the facts. It's a preview, sort of. It's a synopsis, right? So I would be hard pressed at any time to find a police report or a statement of fact that has 100% accurate details. And I'll share this example for you, right? So I am the victim of domestic violence. And at one point, my ex-husband was arrested for a particularly egregious domestic assault that occurred. And in the report talks about him attempting to unalive me in the presence of our 2 children. I had 4 children in the house at the time, and there were 2 children that were not mine at the time, but they only put in 2, right? So it's a small detail. It wasn't necessarily that germane to the case, but it's still a detail that was wrong, right? It happens all the time, right? And it doesn't necessarily affect the case in a negative way, because you have all these people that can come on and give sworn testimony. And that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing literally waves of first responders that came in at different times with different relationships to the case, different reasons to be on scene, that are all essentially describing the same scene and the same statements made by Karen Read. And that carries a lot of weight.
Yeah. Great point. And I'm sorry you went through that, Ellie.
Is going to try to take statements from people. he couldn't get a train of thought out of her. He couldn't get words out of her. But the thing is, that report was so short. There should have been statements from Harry, Jen, and Karen. They should have been able to get some statements from them. I don't know if there was multiple different reports. It just seems like there's a dead guy.
That's the other thing I want to say. Just you going, like that, like, it just makes me think of Turtle Boys really victimizing this person that was on the Free Karen Reed, Free Karen Reed team for a little bit. And to me, it feels, I just don't understand it seems like the point in so much of the Free Karen Reed movement is to absolutely decimate anyone who has the courage to speak out and then destroy them in a really, really personal way that like I said before, I haven't seen this in other that have gotten this dirty and this specifically personal. Usually they, ignore the victim's family altogether.
Well, I mean, if you can't attack an argument, you attack the person. That's what this is in a nutshell, pretty much. The defense, Karen Reed and all of her supporters cannot directly attack the forensic evidence, right? Or, the overwhelming mountain of evidence, both circumstantial and forensic against her. They can't directly attack that, right? Because it's kind of bulletproof. So instead, they're attacking the people, right? And that's a bold strategy. It's intellectually lazy and disingenuous, and it usually doesn't work out. Were this a debate, they would be Davin points taken off left and right, ad hom attacks, right? It's not a good vantage point to start your argument. And that is where their entire argument sort of begins and ends. It's not so much that they're attacking the evidence directly, they're attacking the people. And if you look hard enough with any person, you're going to find something that you can attack, right? No matter who you are, nobody's clean in this life. If you get out of this life clean, I pity you, right? So there's always going to be something, right? There's always going to be something. It's part of having a human life, a colorful life, right? And so that's sort of where they're originating their argument from. And I don't see that it's going to stand up in trial, right? Because saying that Michael Proctor is a misogynist, jerk may or may not be true. But it doesn't change the fact that microscopic pieces of this woman's taillight were found embedded in the victim's clothing. It's not going to change the fact that his DNA was on her car, that there was a hair on her car. It's not going to change the admissions that she's made. It's not going to change her blood alcohol level. All those things are kind of titanium, right? I wouldn't say they're entirely immovable, but that's hard to push off. So, I don't see how this is going to be a successful strategy. Certainly, on social media, it's been a successful strategy, but I side-eye a lot of the people that are buying into this. And I've had the opportunity, really the privilege of being able to speak to some of the people who have bought into this and understand their vantage point. And it's very heavily bias-based. And again, we go back to the sunk cost fallacy. I've put so much into this, ergo it must be true. And unfortunately, that's not how this works.
Right. It reminds me of Scientology. So once you get up to, I don't know, I think it's OC level 3, you've already spent so much money and you find out that aliens are sucking your soul, you don't want to go back. But all right, back to Boundless Millennial.
On the lawn, there should be more.
Actually, what I wanted to say, Kate, is that it's the same people. So Michael Proctor, probably, if I had to guess, if he said anything about Karen Reed in anger, what I know about police officers is it's a very hard job and they don't take it when one of their own, this is the same philosophy that's saying this is a blue wall of silence and they're all protecting each other. So on one hand, it's a conspiracy built on the blue wall of silence, but now it's that Michael Proctor is personally, it's not that he's so offended by what Karen Reed did. It's a personal attack on Karen Reed because he's so sexist. It's a little bit of a problem there, logically.
I think that the context of those messages, without saying too much, is going to be important. I think that the timing of these text message conversations are also going to be important. I think that, hypothetically speaking, right, that it may be problematic for the defense to bring up some of those text messages, albeit I understand it's probably one of their most solid points, at least in the opening. But when you peel back those layers, what I suspect and anticipate is going to happen, if they elicit testimony about those messages, they're going to be kicking open the door to testimony regarding the witness intimidation. I suspect and anticipate that messages calling her the C word or wishing that she would self-delete in Minecraft probably occurred after she sent a mob of 100 mouth-breathing strangers to his front steps to spit on his driveway and scare his wife and children. It was probably after his wife was being harassed at her job and her personal cell phone number, probably after he was getting abusive texts and calls himself. So I think that's a questionable and risky move for the defense to make, because I would anticipate that the jury would be able to understand maybe the feelings behind something like this when this woman is endeavoring through a mob of psychopaths to destroy your life and your family.
Yeah, very interesting. And by the way, I want to make a correction. I think I said OC. It's OT in Scientology, OT3, operating thetan 3, where you find out that aliens are
questions being asked, right? It's strange. What are those cops doing? Mulaney, the redheaded cop, he was just oblivious and not observant at all. It's almost like they're just agitating all day. And when you talk to them, they have a response, but they're not paying attention. The younger generation is like that. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because they're younger. Maybe I was like that when I was younger. I don't know. But he just was not paying attention to anything. He didn't even see blood on Karen's face. Everyone else saw blood on Karen's face. But the thing is, too, they didn't know what they were looking for. They found the cocktail glass, and they only had a snow blower, so they were only blowing off the top layer of snow. Nobody was digging yet until the CERT team arrived. That's why they didn't find the taillight. But they also didn't know they were looking for a taillight. And they found the sneaker and the hat. But that's because they weren't going through the snow. They were blowing off the top.
So I would I get a little bit touchy, because I would probably be the best witness for the defense visually. I pay more attention with my ears than my eyes. So the fact that he didn't see the things that other people saw, he may have been paying attention to other kinds of details. You know, people pick things up in all sorts of ways, but he may have a point that the younger generation may be less attentive. I don't know. What do you think, Kate? Do you think the younger generation is less attentive?
I think we're looking at the scene through those dash cam videos, and we're seeing just how bad the visibility, again, like you can barely see where 3 women and the victim are with a spotlight on and the cruiser running, right? I am not surprised that it took them a little bit to find the taillight pieces. And I mean, really, Karen told Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe first thing in the morning that she had cracked her taillight. She admits this on national television, right? So there was damage to her taillight by the time that she called Carrie Roberts and Jen McCabe at minimum. I believe it's earlier, but we can start it there. So before the police are even alerted to anything, so before they could intervene and tamper with anything or plant anything, her taillight's already broken. You have the benefit of also having now this cruiser cam footage when they went to do a wellness check on the children at 8:22 a.m. So I was just listening to Court TV the other day, and one of Karen's newest spokespeople was going on and on about how there's an hour discrepancy in the tow, and when it was actually towed, and that would leave Michael Proctor with an hour to. But that's problematic, because you're claiming that the taillight was broken and planted in the evening at 5:30, between 4:30 and 5:30, when they have video of the taillight broken at 8:22 a.m. And I am hoping that they'll be able to kind of bring that back more, if nothing else than by Karen's own statements, right? So I don't think that evidence was planted. I think that's very silly. I think that, as a defense should do, really, they are just chipping away at any piece of human error or human deficit or difficulty within the investigation to try to create reasonable doubt. And I cannot fault the defense for that. That is their job. It is not their job to run essentially a ring of egregious witness intimidation and harassment, right? But it is their job to poke holes and try to create reasonable doubt. I think that they're going a little bit too far with the just really patent allegations of police corruption in ways of like tampering with and planting evidence. I mean, for Michael Proctor to plant microscopic pieces of taillight embedded into fibers of clothing, he would have to be the Babe Ruth of planting evidence. And that is absurd. That is crazy.
Babe Ruth of planting evidence. That's great.
Right.
I think this is a question for you. Elaine, thanks so much. Why do you think the jury thought, after going to 34 Fairview, which I thought was pretty, I mean, they were really up close with that cracked tail light. I thought not so good for Karen Reed. And they saw the area and seeing where John O'Keefe's body was versus what Yannetti said in opening statements about it is his body being under Brian Albert's bedroom window.
I said that right as soon as he said that in opening. I was like, what is this man doing? Right? Because within 15 minutes, the prosecution is showing photographs of the scene, right? And it is clearly about 100 feet from the bedroom window to where this man was found, right? Just for starters. And then, you know, a couple days later, they're going to the crime scene to see it for themselves. That was, I mean, again, I understand they wanted to come out strong. They wanted to be compelling. I'm sure that some of that was maybe played up for the supporters and the media. I don't know how, if I was personally on the jury, I would be insulted by that. You're coming out and I would say telling a lie, but if we want to be more neutral about it, you're making a gross exaggeration right off the bat that is going to be quickly reality tested, and you're not going to come out on the right side of that. That's a bold way to start your defense. I don't know that I consider it that intelligent.
Kathy Chapin, thanks for the sticker. All right, back to Boundless Millennial. The link is in the description of this video. This is his roundup of the Karen Reed trial, day 3.
Layer of snow, even though he was laying there since the night before when it first started snowing. They said he had water frozen on his face, and it seemed like, I saw one picture where you could see the ground beneath him, or it looked like a pool of blood. But then the picture that they showed yesterday to the firefighter, they were like, is this where his body was? And he was like, yes. And it looks like it was all snow, but it was also daylight. So a lot of snow was falling at that time. So what a nightmare of a crime scene in a blizzard like that, where the snow is coming down, hiding all the evidence. So Officer Saraf, credible? I'm not sure. I feel like he could be telling the truth. If I was a juror, I would need more than him. I don't know if she said it's my fault. Maybe she did. If I heard other people heard that as well, then I would believe him. But why wouldn't you write something that important in the report? It is strange. And then we had Karen Reed's lawyers pointing out, look at Jen McCabe sneaking inside the house. It's kind of shocking to me how much they're vilifying this woman, because I know that her lawyers know that the Google search didn't happen in the middle of the night. I know they know that Karen Reed is guilty. The people that are putting it out there about the Google search, there's no way that anyone can know. So you can have an expert talk about the Google search like Brandy Churchwell and whatever, they can talk about it, but unless they did that testing with that specific version and iOS, there's no way they can just make a blanket statement and be like, that's how the software works, and that's how programming works, and that's it, done a story. Because no, every single version of every software has problems and issues. If you literally don't take...
Yeah, the Cellbrite, they have is it Whifflin? Ian Whifflin for Cellbrite?
Yeah.
Whifflin, yeah, come in. Is it Whifflin or Whiffin?
Whiffin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting blinded by all the F's and the I's and maybe putting in an L there. Yeah, coming in from Canada, wrote the program, or no, he didn't write the program, but he knows the program very well. I don't think he created it, but I think he is very involved in Cellbrite and knows it, and is going to show how it's an open browser at 2 a.m. or 2:06 or 2:07, and these searches were done at 6:32 and 6:30 What is
So
it?
he's there.
632, 634, and 630.
It's 623. I think it's 623 and
23,
624.
624. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
and he's their senior expert. So he is in the department that is responsible for the software development. I don't have anything that would support that he was the one who actually wrote the software. I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I think what Lally is saying, my interpretation anyway, is that he is involved with the team that does broader create the software, but he's their senior expert. So if somebody needs to come out and testify, that's the expert that they go to. And they also have, oh my gosh, I'm going to draw a blank on this other woman's name. God help me. I cannot remember the other expert's name that we have, but it's a few. Jessica Hyde. So yeah, I'm sorry. So Jessica Hyde. They have Jessica Hyde, who is another really well-renowned expert. They have the trooper. And then, we have Jen's story, which is that Karen asked her to Google that, in the morning, right? And that's memorialized in the statement of the facts in the case pretty early on. And then you have now the testimony from the EMT that kind of also corroborates that, because she asked him the same thing too. So it's not like Jen McCabe came up with the story out of nowhere. It's consistent with the things that she was saying this morning. So I'm pretty sure that the Google search at this point is all but dead. There's a reasonable explanation for it with the wall files and the way that they work and and there's also a reasonable explanation that's backed up by evidence that I'm sure the defense has at this point as to what was actually searched at 2:27 a.m. It was an Ozone basketball site that was searched at 2:27 a.m. And knowing that the feds, the FBI has text messages going back years for these people now, they're going to, and there's an extraction, from that time period by the police, they're going to see that Jen McCabe was texting with one of her friends and they were discussing Ozone basketball right before she searches at 2:27 a.m. Ozone basketball. And even the defense seems to acknowledge this, and that they're saying, look, she was up, she was awake, she sent a couple texts, then she did the search, right? So, I mean, it's all there and corroborated, right? So I really don't see how the Google search is going to carry over. Again, I do understand that's one of the few things that the defense has to cling to, but this is all smoke and mirrors. The crux of her defense is like, don't look over here at the evidence, look over there instead, right? I don't see how it's going to hold up. Absolutely not. Especially when Jen McCabe gets on the stand and the jury gets to know her in that hour or however long it takes for her to testify. She's an incredibly strong, intelligent, kind woman. She's a, suburban housewife, right? And she was very close to John O'Keefe, and that does shine through. She's not Karen Reed.
Is it too? Chateau Lafty says, is it too late, Kate, for Karen Reed to agree to a plea?
I have it on good authority that from the Commonwealth's perspective, that is not on the table.
Maui Swift, what about Richard Green? How could he provide an explanation for it being 2:27?
I don't think he can. I mean, he can say that I found this particular entry in the wall files and it's time-stamped 2:27. I don't think it's going to hold up to cross. It's certainly not going to hold up to the rebuttal witnesses. And also when you look at Richard Green's CV and his past, he's never testified in court in his life. Not once. So this will be his first time if they call him to the stand. And I'm sure there's a reason for that, but I really don't understand, or I can't anticipate what he's going to testify to without creating issues for himself in the future. And I'm sure they're not paying him enough to do that. I think the Google search it's all but dead at this point.
Wait, Mira Hardy, song request, Melanie Little again? You want to hear it again? We just
on my channel. I'm going to put it on Spotify.
I think you have to, because I've been singing it all weekend. All right, back to Boundless Millennial. Just try to catch up with what's been going on in the Karen Reed trial. He's doing
that version
summation here.
And test with it and try to recreate the mistake that we're seeing. There's no way that they can know. So they're hard to take an expert's word who didn't do the testing and say, oh, we know that it happened, it's a fact. That's dishonest and you're ruining your credibility. And I think that she does a good job for the most part. We don't know that she was home at 12:41. I've always thought it was a lie because we first heard it from Turtle Boy saying that they had ring cam that she was home at 12:41. No, that was deleted. Then we heard it from Yannetti saying there was a voicemail that was left at 12:41. They could hear the garage door and her heels walking on the floor, which is strange because 12:41, that's much earlier than we would think. And that's why they're also saying, we know that she went by the library at that time. So I think that's just a lie. I think that both of those things are a lie. And it's gonna come out. I can't wait to see. We don't know which way she went. We don't know if she pulled over somewhere to look at her damaged car. So that's something we're gonna see. 12:41, I think it was always a lie because now the Commonwealth is saying the key cycle show at 12:45 or 12:46 that she was speeding in reverse 24 miles an hour for like 60 feet. And people on X are all like, oh, whoa, she must be a stunt driver. First of all, she was drunk and she just floored it. She wasn't steering. She just probably got pissed off and backed into him. It's so obvious what happened here. The only question I have is like, should this be manslaughter or murder? That's the only thing that I'm questioning at this point. I'll look at the evidence. I know that those aren't dog bites. I know the Google search didn't happen. I believe the firefighter that said, you know, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. The questions there are the winter jacket. I don't think he had a winter jacket. I don't think so because Karen said in an interview he had no coat on. And they did all the testing on his sweatshirt. So they didn't say anything about a jacket. They would be testing the most outer layer for things, right? So unless the jacket just disappeared. But I just don't think he had a jacket. So I think that firefighter is wrong, but I don't think it ruins his credibility. These people have tunnel vision, especially when it's freezing cold out.
Didn't we all learn this in Legally Blonde? That straight men, or most men, even most men, you know, forget sexuality, do not notice clothing. I mean, didn't we all learn that from Legally Blonde with her Prada shoes? I mean, didn't we learn that? That we're supposed to he's supposed to know a jacket from a thick hoodie that's frozen stiff. I mean,
and it's been 2 years, you know, memories fade. Certainly people, you know, eyewitness testimony is only so good, you know, because details like that can get confused. I'm sure that in his mind, perhaps he had another call that day where he had to cut a winter jacket, or perhaps he was just assuming because of the weather that there was a winter jacket. You don't always remember everything, you know, exactly as it is, particularly with first responders when they're just constantly inundated with trauma after trauma after trauma, right? That's what they do for work, is show up to traumatic events, right? So I don't necessarily take a lot of stock in the fact that he misremembered a heavy winter jacket. It doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Right. So coming up, what do you think is the really important testimony, and where do you think Karen Reid's defense can go? What do you think the state could do better? Those are my questions for you.
So I do wish that they had pulled out more testimony, I guess, about Karen Reid's behavior that morning, how odd that it was. I wish that they had pulled out a little bit more testimony about Karen Reid's jealousy, because what I know from speaking to a lot of John's friends and family is that jealousy was a prevalent issue in the relationship, particularly towards the end with Karen, probably unfounded, you know, and I think that's probably the motive behind this. An interesting piece of information that I have from hearing this story relayed so many times, and for the record, just so people understand, I've said this before, I've heard the story from several people that were there this morning, and they told it to me separately. Obviously, we didn't all sit in a room and like, hey, tell me about the morning that John O'Keefe died. But I've heard the story from several different people. They're all consistent separately, which to me means a lot, right? Like, that's one of the first things that I noticed about this is I'm talking to these different people, and they're all essentially saying the same thing, as the time frames overlap, without any sort of pre-notice that we were going to be discussing this, and without having other people around them to coach them or get their story straight. Very consistent. But one piece of information that was kind of interesting to me is that we have this sort of undertone of Karen's irrational jealousy. It really rears its head in Aruba, right? That's why that gets brought in there, is because she imagined in her head that John was making out with Marietta Sullivan. It didn't happen. Nobody else saw this happening but Karen. Everybody else saw that they bumped into each other and had a quick hug. And it creates a huge issue that is a public outburst followed by a 20 to 30 minute screaming match in the room in the presence of the children, right? And that wasn't an isolated event. She was very jealous of several other people. She was jealous of Amy, John's other long-term girlfriend. She was jealous of other women that John had seen in the past. She was jealous of women that were in John's life that weren't necessarily, that were not romantic or sexual, that Karen was concerned would become. Some of these people were married women. It was irrational. But on the night in question, when John and Karen are driving to 34 Fairview, John is trying to find out where this house is because he's never been there before. And he's on the phone with Jen McCabe. And Jen McCabe at one point gives him a landmark. And that landmark is a woman named Ashley's home. Ashley is the mother of a friend of John's niece, and a woman that John had a brief sexual relationship with. So, and a woman that Karen was vocally in the past very jealous of because she was younger than Karen and arguably more attractive. So it is speculated within the friend group that perhaps sort of the precipitating factor here, or the spark that lit the fuse here, was that John is talking on speakerphone, perhaps, with Jen McCabe, or Karen can otherwise hear this conversation and hears that Ashley's house is near 34 Fairview, and her jealousy flares up. And that would be in character with her, per reports of everybody that knew John, in the months leading up to this. So I think that it's interesting that the defense didn't really bring more of this out. They haven't called all of their witnesses, though. I believe that Laura and Marietta Sullivan are on the witness list for trial. I know that they did testify during grand jury. So, and the children obviously haven't testified yet. So maybe more of that will come out. But I think it really does help paint the picture of what the motive can be here, which is just alcohol, rage, and jealousy.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you is when Kevin from Yellow Cottage Tales had an interview with Kevin J. Mahoney, he said that he heard that they have something so explosive on Jen McCabe that no jury could convict. And I've been asking my audience, what would that have to be for you? And for me, I don't know, maybe I don't know at this point.
On Jen?
Yeah.
I can't see it. I mean, on nothing, really, honestly, nothing. I can't see anything that they could possibly pull out on Jen. They're not. After all this time, there is not that one solid piece of evidence that suggests that Jen was involved in anything. And Jen's not even, they still can't even determine who the third party culprit is, right? The judge remarked that after reading 4,500 pages of discovery, still cannot figure out who their third party culprit is, right? Tying Jen into this is just so silly. And where's the motive? There's no motive. Brian Albert barely knew the guy. Brian Albert absolutely has a reputation around town and even a little bit within the police departments of being a hothead and kind of a jerk, but not a killer, right? And where's the motive? He didn't know John. Colin Albert, he was not at the home when John was there. He was a 17-year-old kid. But again, where's the motive? I think the only person that they could really bring up to have even a halfway plausible motive would be Brian Higgins. And even that is tenuous at best, because Brian Higgins was a young single man. He was hooking up with other women at the time as well. Karen obviously was an option for him, but I don't know that she was the option. And I mean, it's a large stretch to say that, he kissed Karen once, maybe slept with her once. It depends what happened when she went over to the house. They both say it wasn't sexual. I'll believe that. But even if you were to look at it in the other direction, so if they kissed once and maybe slept together once, is that enough to want to kill a guy? I don't know. And I regardless of all this, the fact of the matter is that the hard evidence, the digital evidence, the forensic evidence, all says John O'Keefe never made it into that house. So I don't know if they're going to try to swing it the other way and say that he got beat up on the front lawn, but that's preposterous too.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And do you think that this defense could backfire? After they go after, obviously, Alan Jackson, I was showing his his closing argument in the Phil Spector trial, because I thought it was very interesting, because I've never seen a prosecutor's closing argument like that.
Right.
Where it's usually a closing argument is, here's what happened, blah, blah, and this happened. This, you saw this evidence, you saw this testimony, and they kind of wrap it up, summarize everything that the jury had seen during the trial. In Alan Jackson's closing argument in the Phil Spector trial, he took two defense witnesses that might have been strong and just ripped them to shreds during his closing argument. So, and I had some stuff about his run for DA and some of his cringy run for DA videos, but I'm going to have to save them for tomorrow, because as you guys know, I was traveling this weekend. I'm just getting back and I'm kind of running out of gas. Right. So we can all look forward to that tomorrow. Some cringy Alan Jackson commercials. But do you think that this could backfire, this kind of going after every single witness to me comes off, and I don't know if this is my own bias, as salt of the earth kind of people who want to help people, rescue firefighters, paramedics, really very honest, good, well-meaning, well-intentioned people, not someone who I would think would be on a 90-person conspiracy. But do you think it could backfire, this kind of strategy?
I think it's a tightrope. I think that anytime that one thing that I like to try to challenge the free Karen Read people with, and it's usually not very well received because any sort of logic kind of rattles their cognitive dissonance and they don't want to talk about it. But I use myself as an example, because I am literally the devil to their cult, right? Like there is no one worse than Krusty Panties. So if I am accused of a crime, me, Kate Peter, right? And I turn around and say, everybody is lying except for me, are you going to believe me, right? Even if you don't hate me, if you have a very neutral view or you don't know me at all, if I am accused of a crime and I turn around and say, everybody in this is lying except for me, how credible is that? It's not. It's just not. So I think it's a tightrope. I think that they are doing a good job with the theatrics. I think they're doing a good job of grabbing the attention of the jury. I know that there was a stark contrast between opening statements. I don't know how important that's going to be, because again, opening statements are not evidence, right? It's a roadmap. And that's literally how Lally used it, right? Here is the roadmap to what I'm going to show you. And instead, David Yannetti came out of the gate, my client was framed. That's risky, because now you have to prove that. And I don't think they can.
Yeah. And it's, we're watching this, and it's not a movie. It's not a TV show. These are jurors who've taken an oath they have someone's life in the balance here, and freedom in the, not life in the balance, but freedom in the balance. I mean, future life, freedom is really what I mean. Not just they take that seriously. Yeah.
Right. Also, because Karen at the last minute disputed the courtroom they were using, or one of her very rational and reasonable requests. And, now this jury for the next 4 weeks that we were projecting the trial is going to go on, have to look the O'Keefe family right in their faces. So it's not just Karen's freedom and her life that's at stake here. It's also the closure and healing of this family. These are not light things here. So I don't think that just getting up and screaming, I was framed and everyone is lying, is the best defense. I really question why they didn't just continue down it was an accident defense, because that's where they started. And now we're here. Why? I would believe that it was an accident.
I would believe that was Karen Read directing her defense, because that seems to be Karen Read's personality, vindictive like that, and likes to point the finger at other people. But what do you think? Why do you think it took a turn? Was it the addition of Alan Jackson with Yannetti, or?
Well, she sought out Alan Jackson out of desperation. We know this from her comments to Boston Magazine that came through in the Boston Magazine article, right? She was absolutely terrified after they upped her charges to murder too. She's the one who sought out Alan Jackson. I can guess why, right? I can certainly guess why. I feel like maybe it was the indictment that kind of drove her defense into overdrive, but it makes me wonder if maybe there is something to that murder too. I struggle with it. I have a hard time discerning at this point in the case, where obviously we haven't heard, we've heard a fraction of the evidence so far, I'm sure. I'm still trying to kind of reconcile and figure out why they upped the charges to murder too. I don't necessarily see it, but Karen's reaction to the enhancement of the charges definitely makes me raise an eyebrow as well.
That's interesting. Do you think if you were a juror, you would have a hard time convicting? Can they acquit on murder too and
still get around manslaughter?
Yeah.
Yeah. So manslaughter is still on the table. She was indicted on murder too. She was vehicular manslaughter, leaving the scene of an accident, OUI. There might be another charge in there. I'm rattling this off without having it in front of me. But the point being is that the manslaughter is still on the table. If I was a juror right now today, I would feel very confident. Well, no, actually, that's not true. Because if I was a juror, I couldn't consider all the things that I know from previous motions and hearings and stuff like that. So, I mean, as a juror today, how would you make a determination? The case is only like a week and a half in, right? Knowing what I know, if I were a juror and what I anticipate the evidence to be as this goes on, I would feel comfortable with manslaughter. I don't know about murder too, though. Interesting.
That would be interesting. And I wonder if, what I've seen with the Free Karen Read people is everything is a victory. I think you were just talking about that motion in limine's hearing, which I thought was pretty much a disaster for everything came in for the prosecution. Thought it was a disaster for the defense, and that they saw it as a great win. What hearing were you watching? Everything seems to be a win to them. So it'd be interesting to see if any kind of conviction of Karen Read will be seen as a win or any kind of acquittal, meaning really. I think that's
I really do think that the manslaughter is a slam dunk for them, because their only defense to the manslaughter is someone else did it, and I don't think they can't get there. We've been hearing this for a year now, and they just, no matter how hard they try, they can't get there. They can't establish a motive for somebody else to kill this guy. They can't place him in the house. They can't even place his movements with enough time for the guy to be beat to death. The only person that they can get to sort of disagree with the medical examiner's findings at all is this Richard Sheridan, right? Or Sheridan, I'm not sure if his first name is Richard, from California, who only looked at pictures of the body, and he doesn't conclusively say those are dog bites or scratches, just they might be consistent, right? And he didn't examine the body. I haven't seen anything from Sheridan where he says that it's consistent with a fight. I know that the medical examiner and pathologist both said it is not. I think it's problematic. So I think manslaughter is slam dunk at this point, just knowing what I know. Of course, it's a jury, so there's always that sort of wild card in there. You don't necessarily know what they're going to come back with, but I think the evidence supports manslaughter. I don't know about murder too, but I think the interesting part, and I suppose some of this would be contingent on Judge Canone's jury instructions, which I'm sure, judging from how she's been going, since the trial started, are going to be fair and complete, is that murder too in Massachusetts doesn't necessarily require you to intend to kill someone. It requires you to intend to do an act that you did that you reasonably could have or should have known would result in grievous bodily injury or death. And I think arguably, if she was really gunning it up to 24 miles an hour in a snowstorm drunk with John O'Keefe behind her car, she could have or should have known that was running the risk of grievously injuring him or killing him, right? And I think that's probably where the murder too comes in. And then there's some evidence that, maybe she knew that she hit him and tried to cover it up. And certainly that would be negligence that would play into that murder too, because I think that if she had hit him and then immediately called 911, he would probably still be here today and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Such a sad, sad case. Kate Peter, this has been absolutely my pleasure. Where can people find you?
So my channel is right now called Masshole Troll Mafia Official. We might change it soon. And actually, I will be going live in about an hour with Lindsay Gaetani, who is Turtle Boy's domestic abuse victim, because I know she wanted to clear up maybe some misrepresentations made about the nature of their relationship. And she also wanted to talk more to sort of the breadth of the witness intimidation that is going on right now as it relates to her, because a lot of the things that these other witnesses are saying are happening to them. People are questioning, but they're also happening to her too. So we were going to discuss that. We were going to kind of go over the intricacies of her relationship with Turtle Boy and how toxic and abusive that it really was. And she wanted to, you know, show some receipts and talk about that. So that's where you can find me.
And you're also on X or Twitter. You can follow you on there now. You're kinda on there. But I will be at the live stream. I'll be in the comments. I'll be at your live stream. Meet me there and at 8:45. I'm gonna sign off since it's been so highly requested with Kate's Finest, one of my favorites of Kate's work, which is, of course, one more an encore presentation of the Melanie Little song. Thank you, guys.
Wait till you hear the song tonight, though. You're gonna love it. I made a new one for tonight.
I can't wait. I can't wait. So thank you so much, Kate. Please hit the like, subscribe to the channel, leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Support my Patreon. Send me a Venmo. Buy me a coffee, and I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Here's Masshole Troll Mafia Official with More Than a Little to attorney Melanie Little.
Thank you so much, Roberta.
Thanks. Thank you. It's gonna play. Say.
She's live streaming at night. Her feelings are hurt. She'll put up a fight to spread insane disinformation. She uses really obvious beauty filters to hide that she's really an 800-year-old vampiric creature. She sustains herself on adrenochrome, harvested from impoverished orphan children. You know she's going to you if you make her feel sad. If you offend her on Twitter, it's a federal crime, and that's bad. Oh, Melanie, you're more than a little slow. You inserted yourself into a case and lie about things you really don't know. Your narrative is paper thin. Your own expert gets betray you. Oh, Melanie Little, nothing you say is true. Melanie Little doesn't like rumors on Twitter. That's why she rage quit, but she'll accuse innocent people of horrible crimes. And she doesn't care about the truth or facts or any of it. I wasn't in Cancun that day, but I heard she shared a room with Alan Jackson, and when they left he came out as gay. That's what I heard anyway, and it's pretty cool of her to be so vile that it turned Alan Jackson gay. I'm just speculating, not sure if any of this is true. I'm just doing what you do.